Okay, let's start with a problem pretty much everyone understands, even if they don't think about it in economic terms. Managing something everyone shares, like a fishery.
Right. The classic tragedy of the commons scenario.
Exactly. Everyone knows the fish stock needs protecting for the long haul, but, well, the temptation for any one person to just take as much as they can right now is huge.
And that often leads to a race to the bottom, potentially destroying the resource for everyone. It seems intractable sometimes.
It does, and for a long time, economic models basically agree. They painted a really gloomy picture. They tended to conclude that stable cooperation, it just wouldn't happen unless the group was really small.
Or unless you had strict government rules, or maybe just privatize the whole thing. That was the standard view.
Which is why we're really excited to be digging into this paper today. It tackles this head-on and offers a different perspective, mathematically speaking.
Yeah, this one's called Cooperation and Club Goods, Fisheries Management in the Spirit of Elinor Ostrom, and the authors are Lone Grønbæk, Marco Lindroos, and Gordon Munro.
And it really gets at a central conflict, doesn't it, between those pessimistic models and what actually happens in the real world.
Absolutely. On one side, you've got the traditional game theory, things like repeated partition function games suggesting cooperation is doomed in larger groups. Very pessimistic.
But then you have the work of Nobel laureate Elinor Ostrom. She spent her career showing that, wait a minute, stable management of common resources, CPRs she called them, including fisheries, it actually is pretty common.
Her empirical work was groundbreaking. She found communities all over the world successfully managing resources without top-down control, often relying on local institutions, social norms, reputation. Stuff economists often just waved away as, social capital.
Right, this fuzzy concept. And that was the challenge, wasn't it? How do you take something like social capital and actually build it into those rigorous game theory models?
That's precisely the mission of this paper. The authors try to bridge that gap to resolve the conflict between the theory that said it can't work and Ostrom's evidence that said, but it does work.
Okay, so before we get to their solution, maybe let's unpack the old problem a bit more. Why were those standard models so darn pessimistic? What did they look like?
Well, they often started with these partition function games. The basic idea is to model how coalitions form.
Yeah.
Groups of players deciding to cooperate within a larger group.
Like fishermen agreeing not to overfish.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the models kept showing these coalitions weren't stable. The benefits of like maintaining the fish stock spill over to everyone, even those not cooperating. Those are the positive externalities.
The free rider problem. Someone else does the hard work of restraint, and I benefit without paying the cost.
Precisely. Static models basically said, yeah, forget stable cooperation unless your group is tiny. So researchers moved to dynamic or repeated games.
Try and capture the long-term view.
Right. Using things like trigger strategies. The idea is we all cooperate now for a good joint profit, but crucially, if anyone deviates, gets caught cheating, it triggers a punishment. Usually, the punishment was modeled as everyone reverting to full-on, non-cooperative fishing forever after, like a nuclear option.
Okay, hang on. That sounds, well, kind of unbelievable as a threat. If I catch you cheating, my threat is basically, I'm going to blow up the whole fishery, making myself just as badly off as you. Why would I ever actually do that?
You've nailed it. That's the huge weakness, what the paper calls the curse of symmetry.
Curse of symmetry. Okay.
Yeah. When that trigger gets pulled in the standard model, yes, it punishes the cheater. But because everyone reverts to this non-cooperative free-for-all, the Nash equilibrium, it punishes the virtuous players, the ones trying to enforce the rules, just as badly.
So the cops get punished as much as the robber.
Pretty much. The threat just isn't credible because making good on it means shooting yourself in the foot. So naturally, cooperation tends to fall apart, especially in larger groups, because everyone knows the threat is basically hollow.
Okay, that makes sense. So the standard punishment mechanism was flawed because it hurt everyone equally.
Exactly, and this is where Ostrom's observations become so important. She suggested that real-world groups must be using different kinds of punishment mechanisms, ones that, critically, allow them to sanction the defectors without harming themselves in the process.
Which brings us back to social capital. How did the paper model that? This seems like the key step.
It is. The authors introduced a really crucial theoretical innovation. They decided to treat social capital not just vaguely, but specifically as a club good.
Okay, club good, let's define that. We usually hear about public goods.
Right. So a quick refresher. A public good is non-rivalrous, meaning my use doesn't stop your use, and it's non-excludable, meaning you can't easily stop someone from benefiting. Think national defense or clean air.
Got it.
A club good, though, is different. It's still non-rivalrous. Lots of people can benefit at once, but it is excludable. You can be kicked out of the club.
Like a gym membership or access to a streaming service. You pay your dues, you follow the rules, you get the benefits, you break the rules.
You're out. You lose access. And in the fisheries context, the club benefits aren't necessarily tangible things you hold. They're things like access to vital, real-time information. Where are the fish today? What gear is working?
The stuff fishermen share amongst themselves.
Exactly. Or maybe preferential treatment at the docks, maintaining good social standing, which is crucial for, everything in a small community, business deals, even family life. If you cheat the group, you risk getting cut off from all of that. You're excluded.
That sounds much more like real-world social pressure, and the paper grounds this in reality. They mentioned a specific example.
They do, and it's a great one. They reference a study by V. Salagrama on 2 fishing villages in Andhra Pradesh, India, where community management was working really well.
And how did it work there? What was the club?
Effectively, the Fishermen's Caste Panchayat served as the club. It had a council of elders who set the fishing rules and, crucially, imposed penalties if those rules were broken.
What kind of penalties are we talking about? Telling off.
Oh, much more than that. It could be straightforward fines, which obviously hurt financially, but it could escalate to full social and economic ostracization.
Ostracization? Wow.
Yeah, imagine being banned from the fishery, unable to land your catch locally, maybe even shunned in the village. You lose access to buyers, to shared knowledge. It's potentially devastating economically and socially.
Okay, and here's the key point, I think. These punishments are internal to the club, right? They hit the rule breaker, but not the rule enforcers.
Precisely. That's what breaks the curse of symmetry. The fines, the ostracization they impose, costs only on the defector. In fact, if they collect fines, that money could even be used to benefit the members in good standing, maybe lower their fees, fund a community project.
So enforcing the rules doesn't hurt the enforcers. It might even help them. The threat is suddenly very credible.
Absolutely. It's risk-free, even potentially beneficial, for the coalition to punish a defector. It uses what William Nordhaus called an internal penalty, linked to the game's payoffs, but designed to harm only the one who deviates.
Okay, brilliant. We have the theory club good and the real-world example. Now, the math. How do you translate social shunning into an equation?
That's where the parameter beta comes in. The authors introduced beta as a value between 0 and 1, exclusively, so beta in 0, 1.
Okay, a fraction less than 1.
Right. And the core idea is elegantly simple. They model the punishment being excluded from the club's benefits as effectively making it much more costly for the detected cheater to fish.
More costly. How?
If the normal cost of fishing effort for everyone is, say, says, then for a detected deviator, that cost instantly becomes TIDS divided by beta 1.
Okay, so since betas is less than 1, dividing by beta makes the cost higher.
Much higher. If the club decides on a really harsh punishment, they can set beta very low, say 0.1. Suddenly, the cheater's cost of fishing effort is $6.11, which is 10 times higher than everyone else's.
Wow, okay. So low beta means severe punishment, driving up the violator's costs.
Exactly. And if the cost becomes high enough, it might just make it economically impossible for them to continue fishing profitably. They could still physically fish, maybe, but it wouldn't make financial sense.
So this changes the whole game structure after detection, doesn't it? It becomes asymmetric.
That's the crucial word, asymmetric. Before detection, or if deviation isn't detected, everyone faces the same cost, $16. But the moment a deviation is detected and punished, bang. The game flips.
The coalition members keep their normal cost of dollars, but the lone deviator is suddenly saddled with this inflated cost to beta dollars.
Yeah.
It's like the community just slapped a massive tax specifically on their work.
It is. And that asymmetry is the key that unlocks everything. It leads directly to the paper's really dramatic findings.
Which is this drum roll.
The introduction of the club good, modeled this way, completely lifts the curse of symmetry.
Okay, let's really emphasize that. No more mutual destruction. What does this asymmetry do for the players who stuck to the rules, the ones doing the enforcing?
Instead of being punished alongside the cheater, they can actually be rewarded for enforcing the rules.
Rewarded? How?
Remember the old model? Detection, everyone loses in a non-cooperative mess. In this new model, detection triggers an asymmetric game. It's now the cooperative coalition playing against the high-cost deviator. The coalition members just keep cooperating amongst themselves, maintaining their high joint profits.
Okay, so they don't lose out, but how are they rewarded?
Think about it. If the punishment is harsh enough, if to metals is low enough, the deviator's costs become prohibitive. Their optimal fishing effort drops, maybe even to zero. They're effectively forced out.
Wow.
So the coalition continues to get the same high total returns from the well-managed resource, but now those returns are divided among fewer players, $1 instead of $1. Each remaining member gets a bigger slice of the pie.
Got it. Punishing the cheater directly increases the payoff for everyone else in the coalition. The threat isn't just credible, it's profitable for the group to carry it out.
Exactly. It becomes self-serving. That's a world away from the old model's self-destructive threat.
This must have huge implications for the stability of cooperation, especially thinking about how patient players need to be.
It does. That connects to the discount factor, delta dollar. Remember, delta basically measures patience how much you value future payoffs compared to today's. High patience, delta close to 1, makes cooperation easier, but you can't always rely on that.
Right, you want cooperation to be stable even if people aren't infinitely patient saints.
Precisely. And the paper shows this mathematically. It's the proposition 1. When the club good mechanism is active, the absolute worst payoff a potential cheater can expect if they get caught. The minimax value is much lower than in the old symmetric model.
Their costs go way up.
Right. And if the potential downside of cheating is worse, you don't need as much patience to resist the temptation to cheat in the first place. Therefore, the minimum discount factor needed to keep the cooperation stable is also lower.
Which means cooperation is stable under a much wider range of conditions, even with more players, or players who are, reasonably impatient.
That's the core result. It mathematically validates Ostrom's real-world findings by fixing that one crucial flaw in the old models, the unbelievable punishment.
And what's really neat, you mentioned betas as endogenous. What does that mean here?
Endogenous just means it's internal to the system, something the players themselves can control. Unlike, say, the economic interest rate, related to the delta, which is usually set by outside forces, the harshness of the club punishment is something the members of the coalition can choose.
So they can design their own enforcement system. They can decide just how tough they want the club rules to be.
Exactly. They can actively tune beta to ensure stability for their specific situation, the number of members, the value of the resource, etc. They become designers of their own cooperative stability.
The paper had some examples of this, right? Showing how the beta needs to change.
Yeah, they have a numerical simulation, figure 1, that makes it really clear. It shows that as the number of players goes up, you need a lower beta bet, a harsher club punishment to keep cooperation stable, which makes intuitive sense.
More potential free riders, so you need a stronger deterrent.
Right. But the crucial thing is that stability increases dramatically as beta gets lower. Even with quite a few players, or with relatively impatient players, higher discount rates, if you can make that club exclusion really bite low, cooperation can hold. The social structure itself becomes a powerful, quantifiable force.
So wrapping up the main findings, this paper really does build that bridge. It uses the club good concept to bring social capital into game theory, showing mathematically why Ostrom was right stable. Self-governing cooperation is much more possible than the old models predicted.
It's a significant theoretical vindication for Ostrom and her colleagues, definitely. It gives economists the tools to understand how these community-based systems actually function and maintain stability.
Now, we should also touch on limitations. This sounds powerful, but where does the analysis apply most clearly?
Well, the authors are careful to point out that their primary analysis focuses on domestic fisheries, often within a single country's exclusive economic zone, EEZ.
Okay, why that limitation?
Because in those settings, you're more likely to find the conditions that make club goods work well. You often have smaller groups, maybe shared culture, existing social structures like that Caspanchad example, which make it easier to define the club and enforce exclusion.
Right, it's easier to ostracize someone in your own village than, a foreign fishing fleet.
Exactly. So the big acknowledged challenge is extending this framework to the much messier world of international fisheries,
Where the players are nations, often with huge power differences, and social capital is way harder to pin down.
Right. Can you really shun a major fishing nation in the same way? What constitutes the club good internationally? Is it access to treaties, shared scientific data, reputation on the world stage?
But the authors seem hopeful that the underlying logic still applies.
They conjecture that, yes, the club good model will be highly relevant there too. It just requires more work to identify what those excludable club benefits are in an international context. But the core idea that punishment needs to be asymmetric and ideally internal likely holds.
It shifts the focus to thinking about reputation, access to information, treaty benefits. Maybe those are the levers for international cooperation.
That seems to be the direction. Thinking about these intangible, excludable goods as the key tools to prevent free riding, even on a global scale.
It's a really powerful lens. Okay, so final thought for our listeners. If this idea that access to shared information and social standing, these club goods, can be such effective tools against free riding and fishing,
Mm.
where else might this apply?
Mm.
Think about your own life, maybe professional organizations you're part of, trade groups, certifications you hold, maybe even online communities or, yeah, your local neighborhood group.
Are they acting like clubs? Creating value you only get by staying in good standing.
Exactly. What are the excludable goods in those groups, and how does the risk of losing access shape behavior? It makes you wonder how many powerful informal clubs are operating all around us, quietly ensuring cooperation through these kinds of internal pressures. Something to think about.